Meanwhile, the U.S. is officially starting a formal review of the U.S.-Mexico-Canada agreement. The U.S. Trade Representative is about to begin 45 days of public consultations ahead of a mandated review of the agreement next year. While Canada and Mexico have been targets of the Trump administration's recent tariffs, those tariffs don't apply to goods covered under the USMCA agreement. However, both countries have been hit by President Trump's separate tariffs on steel, aluminum, copper, and autos. Shaun Haney with Real Agriculture joining us. And Shaun, earlier in the year, we did hear a lot about the trade tariff situation between the U.S. and Canada. But what are you hearing from the Canadian side right now? It seems to have gone a little quieter these days.
Yeah, I think it's a great observation. The fact that things have quieted down a little bit. The U.S. administration has been much more focused on India and the U.K. and Japan, South Korea, of course, China as well, and less attention and noise around Mexico and Canada. Although if you look at Mexico and Canada, they are very much still worried about the situation. And of course, we have this July 1st, 2026 date that is really fast approaching, where there is going to be some sort of review of this trade deal. I think everyone would be shocked if the U.S. side didn't want to renegotiate. I think, Clinton, one of the things I've been hearing from the Canadian side, people in the know in Ottawa, is the fact they're still really waiting to hear what the U.S. really wants. What needs to get this deal across the line? There has been some demands that have been made. For example, the digital services tax that Canada was going to put in place that was going to really impact some U.S. tech firms, Canada repealed it. And it basically just got the U.S. back to the negotiating table. In some ways, you could maybe even observe or perceive that the U.S. is potentially going to play stiffer negotiation tactics on Canada and Mexico than some of the other countries around the world, but that's yet to be determined. I think we got some rough road in front of us. We're going to hear, I think this is going to get turned up from a heat and volume perspective. But at the end of the day, I'm still confident all three of these countries cannot afford economically to not have a free trade deal.
Yeah, they work together so well and always have. And from that perspective, Shaun, talk to me about the Canadian consumer, because they took some of this pretty personally and quit buying U.S. goods for a while. Has that continued?
Yeah, that's still going on, Clinton, for sure. There is still very much an increased Buy Canada sort of campaign that is going on. Prime Minister Carney talked about this even last week in one of his addresses. I think the reality here, though, is because of the integrated supply chain, complementary supply chain, the average car crosses the border between Canada and the U.S. like 7 times. Boycotts are really difficult. And some of these boycotts that have been going on really prove that, where, yeah, the bottling happens in Wisconsin, but the feedstock comes from Manitoba. So what are you doing? And so the consumer has pushed back. All of that is due to some of the earlier talk this year about the 51st state from the president. Thankfully, since the Canadian election, that's kind of been turned off. Hopefully that doesn't get hyped up again.
Well, Shaun, always appreciate your insights. Thank you so much for being here. Shaun Haney, Real Agriculture.